Hallo, freunde und willkommen. My name is Nate. Welcome back to my channel. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about something a little bit closer to home for me, and that is the recruitment practices of the U.S. military. Now, as many of you know, I am a veteran. I spent almost 10 years in the Army. And as a matter of fact, the last 3 years of my service time, I was in fact a recruiter. So I am very scared about the shady recruitment practices. Now, being that I was a recruiter during some of the worst times of recruitment in general, and during a time in which the United States was going off to Afghanistan and Iraq, it was tough. So we'll see what this video has to say about it. A couple other little house cleaning things to get through. First, I am trying out a new mic. I am recording on my iPhone and not my Canon camera today. I want to see the difference. The iPhone, I'm able to record in 4K. That is a little bit better than the Canon. The Canon 4K, it doesn't focus very well, and I've noticed in some of my videos the focus has been off just enough to bother me. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but I usually shoot 1080p on the Canon just for that reason. But I'm going to use my iPhone, and I'm trying this wireless mic that's connected into my iPhone for sound. I also have a secondary mic up here, my Yeti, just in case the audio isn't good enough with this. I can hopefully salvage a lot of it with that. Also, I thought today, let's do something a little bit different. And you know what? This video is brought to you by Warsteiner Premium Lager from Germany. Now, I can't say that I've never had Warsteiner before. I have, and I do enjoy a good Warsteiner once in a while. It is a nice golden color. It's beautiful. Looks delicious. And it's not bad. It really isn't. It's more along the lines of a Pilsner, I believe. A lighter beer. I'm not a huge Pilsner fan. I prefer the darker beer or the Hefeweizens. But nonetheless, this is pretty good as well. So, with all of that out of the way, hopefully everything works okay and that I'm able to actually download the footage from my iPhone to my computer, because I'm one of those weird ones that I use Apple everything except for my desktop, which is a PC that I built myself. So we'll see how all that process goes. But in the meantime, let's just jump right into the video.
The United States military, the largest, most powerful, most dangerous fighting force on the planet. A military that hasn't been involved in a defensive war since the 1940s, yet whose budget continues to balloon every year. U.S. military spending currently exceeds that of the next 10 nations combined. We have over 600 military bases outside our borders, occupying over 80 countries around the world. The United States military, while it tries to sell itself as a force for freedom and democracy, is not a welcome sight in much of the world. Our aggressive posturing, bullying, and occupation has turned world opinion against the U.S. Armed Forces over the past few decades, and it's not hard to see why. When you think of a modern fighting force, you typically think of tanks, fighter jets, Humvees, drones, and aircraft carriers. But these giant death machines don't operate on their own. The U.S. military, like any other, relies on recruits. Americans willing to pick up arms and kill for their country. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the state of U.S. military recruiting and the shady tactics used by the armed forces to rope in new soldiers. Before we begin, let's take a second to discuss why the U.S. feels like it needs such a massive military. Since the end of World War II, and certainly since the end of the Cold War, the United States has been the sole world superpower. This has given the country the luxury of using that power to clamp down on the world's economy with an iron grip. The US relies on other countries relying on it. If another country doesn't feel the need to grovel for US assistance and trade deals, the US military will often be called in to create an environment that forces that country to reevaluate. If crippling sanctions aren't enough, boots on the ground certainly will be.
So, kind of, in other words, basically what I'm getting from this is that the United States like to create conflicts, therefore creating avenues of income and reliability from these countries, right? So then if nothing's going on in the world, there's no reason for such a massive military, and you're not making any money. You're losing money by having all these troops you have to pay for and equipment you have to pay for. So that right there is pretty shady. And I'm not ashamed to admit that, the United States, we almost need conflict in the world in order to survive, if you know what I mean. In order for us to have such a massive military, there needs to be a reason for it. And if there's nothing going on, we create that reason for it.
But if the United States already has such a stranglehold on the rest of the world, why does the military budget keep increasing? A large part of it is to feed the ravenous military-industrial complex and deliver lucrative contracts to companies like Boeing, Lockheed, and Raytheon. But more recently, US officials have cited the possibility of a great power conflict with China. That kind of talk should alarm us. The last great power conflict, though it never devolved into outright war, was the Cold War with the Soviet Union, during which time we almost caused nuclear annihilation on multiple occasions. Before that, it was World War II. If US officials are gearing up to start another war of this magnitude, the world is in for a very bad time. With this aggressive rhetoric becoming more common, the US military has been adamant about maintaining a fighting force of 500,000 soldiers, and this requires an intense recruiting program. So, how does the world's largest military entice the next generation of soldiers? Well, these days, it seems to be with cartoons that appropriate inclusive language, video games, and taking advantage of those in poverty. Let's start with the video games. I'm sure you're all familiar with Twitch. If somehow you're not, Twitch is the largest live streaming platform in operation right now. They bring in insane numbers of both streamers and viewers, averaging roughly 3 million concurrent viewers at any given time, who watch a total of around 500 million hours of content per week. That's a huge audience, and a lot of time spent on individual streams, which can run for hours. As far as demographics go, the audience skews young and male, with about 65% of viewers being male, 41% between the ages of 16 and 24, and 73% between the ages of 16 and 34. To military recruiters, Twitch is a dream come true. You have a captive audience of young, impressionable viewers who tend to develop parasocial relationships with the streamers they watch. It's the perfect medium for young, charismatic recruiters to pitch the military to the next generation. And they know this. In 2018, the US Army launched its own Twitch channel as part of its new, more modern approach to recruitment. The Navy followed suit shortly after. In the first 6 months of 2020, the military had bagged 13,000 new recruiting leads from Twitch alone. Keep in mind that many Twitch users are underage, as you only have to be 13 years old to make an account. So, you have young, incredibly malleable children watching trained Army and Navy recruiters play games like COD and Fortnite for hours on end, while they surreptitiously try to convince their viewers to join the military. If this sounds incredibly shady and predatory, that's because it is, and it gets worse. Early in their streaming endeavors, the Army esports mods would ban users for asking about US war crimes, until they were eventually forced to unblock those people after accusations of First Amendment violations. Then there's the Navy claiming that their streamers aren't recruiters, despite the fact that they're required to take the same training courses as Navy recruiters before they're considered for the role. The Army even went so far as to just straight up lie and put up a link to a fraudulent Xbox giveaway, which, when clicked, instead took you to an Army recruitment information form. This was later taken down by Twitch. Hassan Piker, one of the most popular leftist streamers, rightly accused these recruitment practices as being predatory. Shout out to Hassan, by the way. Thanks for boosting my videos. You should all go watch him if you don't already. Now, Twitch is just one cog in the modern military recruitment machine. Another shameful practice is specifically targeting poor students who have few opportunities.
Okay, so the Twitch thing, I've I don't get. I'm not a Twitch user. I've never been a gamer. Back when I joined, it wasn't even a thing. There was no YouTube, there was no Facebook, there was barely internet, period. So we didn't have that kind of focus on trying to get new recruits. But I do agree that it is predatory. You are going after 13, 14 year olds. And in case viewers outside the United States or even in the United States that don't know, um, if you're under 18, if you're 17, you need a parent's signature to join the military. And you don't actually join until you're 18. That's when you really sign. Well, you sign paperwork then with your parent's signature, but you're not technically in the military until you're 18. Um, I could be wrong. Actually, as a matter of fact, now that I think about it, you might be able to join when you're 17, but you need parental consent. Once you're 18, you're a legal adult. You can do what you want. I joined the military when I was 20, so I didn't need parental consent. I did it on my own, then told my parents afterwards, which probably isn't the smartest thing to do. But I can understand using Twitch and how on the surface it seems pretty legit. I mean, it's marketing. That's all recruitment is. It's marketing. You try and find the audience, your target audience, and you go after them. And whatever avenues they are using, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, you target that. You go in and that's your target audience. So you're going to use what they use. Now, it is predatory and extremely shady when they start banning people for mentioning war crimes or asking questions about war crimes, because every country has been guilty of war crimes, the United States included. We are not innocent in that by any stretch of the imagination. And to have a link to free Xbox, yet it takes you to an information page about joining the military, that's just flat out false advertising. That's lying, which recruiters have a bad reputation for being a bunch of liars. I know my recruiter was very good at selling the military, selling the job that I had ultimately picked. I don't remember if he ever just outright lied to me, but he didn't tell me the entire truth, which can be construed as lying to a degree as well. So that right there is new to me. I didn't know that Twitch was such a huge thing for recruitment. So that's interesting and sad at the same time that they resorted to such low, shady methods of trying to get young people into the military.
Back in the 70s, the New York Times ran a story about how Sergeant Hard Times is the best recruiter in the world, rightly pointing out the fact that in times of economic precarity, people are driven to latch on to whatever opportunities they can find. This is still very much the case today. When job or life prospects are lacking, recruiters can weaponize that fear and uncertainty to press young people into service. One recent program offers the perfect example of how the military targets those in precarious conditions. In what's been dubbed Focus 22, the Pentagon has selected 22 cities which have large Black and Latino populations. Recruiters descend on these cities like buzzards, stationing themselves in schools and public places to try to ensnare as many young people as possible. Some cities, like Baltimore, have allowed the military to install their March to Success software on all the city's public computers. This software is meant to look like a study aid, but it also collects user data so that recruiters can track down anyone who uses it. If keeping a database of a city's young people sounds bad, just wait till you hear about the Jammers database. Jammers, or the Joint Advertising Market Research Study, is a billion-dollar database that catalogs the data of over 30 million Americans between the ages of 16 and 25. This database was classified as top secret until 2005. Preying on the poor isn't new. Militaries throughout history have used their poor as cannon fodder, while the rich, those benefiting from the wars, never have to send their children to die. It's a hideous practice, and it reflects very poorly on this nation that so many people feel like they have no alternative. So, we've seen soldiers trying to ensnare underage gamers to become pawns in their death machine, and government programs to collect the peasants and ship them off to blow up their fellow human beings on the other side of the world. But there's one more aspect of the military's recruitment initiative that we should discuss.
That right there is scary. Um, Having all these programs on public computers, on the surface they look like study aids, yet the military has been gathering personal information on all of these people and classifying it as top secret. That should scare the hell out of anybody. Um, Yet, all the time in the news, all you're hearing about is Facebook and maybe YouTube and these other um, applications that are targeting people and using personal information. Um, and people are up in arms about that. So, to I didn't know this either. To have the military secretly gathering information, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me one bit. The U.S. government is shady as so. This does not surprise me, but it's scary nonetheless. You know what I mean? So somebody's going through these study aids, and I can kind of imagine the way it goes, because in order to join the U.S. military, you have to take what's called the Asvab Test. Don't ask me what that stands for. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but basically it's a skills test. It's a bunch of math, science questions broken down into categories. You need to score a certain score in order to be able to be eligible for joining the military. Now, the higher your score, theoretically, the more options you have for what you want to do in the military and what branch will actually want to take you. So in high school, I was required to take it as a junior in high school. All juniors were required to take it. I scored 2 points below the maximum amount. So I had every recruiter calling and wanting to take me out to lunch and talk about the military and this and that. And at that point, I didn't want anything to do with the military, so I just ignored them all. I had to take it again once I did join. I didn't score quite as well because I was a couple years removed from school, so I was out of that. It wasn't fresh in my head anymore. But I didn't score bad. I could have picked pretty much anything I wanted, except for maybe the highly technical engineering type jobs, or top secret linguist jobs or anything like that. But I scored decent enough. So I think what they're doing is they were hiding these questions into the study aid, right? So a student logs in, they go through this study aid. What they're doing is they're pretty much showing the military how smart they are. So the better they do on these study aids, I imagine those are the ones that they would put their names and information into a separate list, saying these are the ones we want to target first because they scored the highest on these practice tests or these study aids, and those students who didn't score as well would go into a different list. Now, I'm just speculating here. I have no idea if that works, but that kind of makes sense to me, based on them using study aids on which students that they could target that would have a better chance of getting into the military. So that, the United States kind of brags about the U.S. military being an all-voluntary force. But is it truly that voluntary when they're also targeting the lower income families, the lower income neighborhoods, cities, and promising them these grand adventures, and you're going to make money and you don't have to pay for rent and utilities, and you get a sign-on bonus of X number of dollars, you get to go to school for free, you get to travel the world. I used a lot of those tactics as a recruiter. I never lied to anybody as a recruiter. That was, I guess, one of my flaws as a recruiter. If they asked me, again, like I said, I was a recruiter um, during the war over in Afghanistan and Iraq, so it was difficult right off the bat because, who wants to go to war? And I would have people ask me, am I going to get deployed? Am I going to go to war? And my answer was always, yep, probably. You probably will. Now, based on what job you pick, will determine how close to the actual combat you will be. Obviously, if you're in a combat job or combat arms or combat support, you'll be right there. Now, if you're in some sort of what's the other word, administrative role or anything like that, you won't be right there shooting at people, but you're still going to get deployed. That's the military. Everybody has the chance of getting deployed. I'm not going to say everybody gets deployed, because sometimes people get lucky or they aren't in long enough during a conflict to actually get deployed, but there's a chance. Everybody, finance, infantry, everybody, cooks, water trucks, they all are needed during combat. So I would tell them straight up, yeah, you probably will, but are you going to see a lot of action? Probably not if you're going to go into this certain job. So I never lied to anybody. I would try and tell, because the last thing I wanted is for somebody to go into the military with a false sense of security or a false sense of what the job entailed. And if, for me, being a soldier in the front lines, I was a scout, I was in the cavalry, so I was, we were the ones that went into enemy territory first. And if the guy next to me was lied to about what he actually was going to do, and if he didn't really want to do that, I don't want him with me. I wanted somebody with me watching my back who wanted to be there, who I knew 100% I could trust with my life, because that's what you are literally doing. You're trusting your life in somebody else's hands. And if they don't want to be there, you can't trust that they're going to be there to watch your back. So I never lied to anybody about what it was going on, but we did have those areas that we would target. We would go into high schools, set up a little table with all our brochures, talk hype about the military and how great it was. Don't get me wrong, the military was probably the best choice I ever made in my life, besides obviously getting married and having kids. Up until that point, I needed the military. I needed that as a focus, to put me on the right path. And so I don't regret any of it, but we did target those less fortunate, because they were the ones who were more, had a better tendency to say yes. I also recruited in Western Pennsylvania and Allegheny County, Meadville, Pittsburgh. So it was difficult at that point because they weren't really pro-military, a lot of them. And if they didn't have money already, they were going into the family business or following their father's footsteps, or, the mills or what have you. So it was difficult in that regard as well. But there were those less fortunate, as there are in every city and state, that I knew I was more likely to get a yes from them, because they would see this as a way out of town, a way to get out of whatever situation that they were in. And sometimes that's okay, because the one kid that I remember, and I will never forget till the day I die, I thought he was going to be one of those that would get cold feet at the last minute and not want to do it. And I remember being on the phone with him for probably 2 hours one night, and he kept telling me, Sergeant Lawson, I don't know if I can do this. People are saying that I'm not going to make it. And I said, hold on a minute. So you're letting other people dictate whether you're going to succeed or not. I said, for me, if somebody tells me I can't do something, I'm going to do it just to prove them wrong. just out of spite. I said, you are more than capable of doing this. You have all the necessary knowledge and skills to join the military, and then you're going to learn while you're in. I said, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. I said, all you have to do is get through basic training, which is not the military. It's rough, it's tough. They yell at you. They will make you feel this big. But when you're done, you will have such a sense of accomplishment that you'll be proud that you went through it. So I gave them this long spiel, and I meant every word. I did not sugarcoat anything. I knew, based on this kid's lifestyle and where he lived and all of that the military really was a great opportunity for him to get out, to experience something, to find his own path, because he wasn't going anywhere where he was, similar to me. And so after what, he did ship, he went to basic training, he graduated basic training, got shipped to Germany. And I got a phone call to my office one morning, and it was him. And he was calling me from his post in Germany. And I'll never forget, he was calling me to thank me for what he said was, thank you for making me do this. I said, I didn't make you do shit, man. You did this on your own. It was all you. I just gave you the information. I gave you the tools. I gave you the resources. You did it. You decided. You made the choice, and you went through basic training. Not me. I didn't do that for you. You got through basic training on your own. You graduated basic training. You got to your post in Germany. He said, this is the best thing that I think I've ever done. So that one kid right there made the 3 years worth it. I mean, because believe me, recruiting sucks. But like they said in the video, they do target those less fortunate because it's a better chance of getting a yes. You're not going to target somebody who's rich, famous, has their life all planned out already. You're not going to get those. Now, I'm not saying you'll never get those, because look at some of these professional athletes. Tillman, for example, since I live in Arizona, he was a professional football player for the NFL. He decided to quit the NFL to join the military because he felt a sense of duty to his country. Unfortunately, he was killed in action. There's a lot of shady stuff that goes around that whole story that I won't get into. But, so I'm not saying it never happens, but it's a lot fewer than those who are less fortunate.
And in a surprising twist, it's probably the one that's gotten the most bad press. For as long as we've had a military, there have been propaganda campaigns to try to convince citizens to enlist. For the last couple decades, recruitment ads have generally looked like something out of Black Hawk Down or Call of Duty. Big, scary guys driving amphibious vehicles, rappelling out of helicopters, and running around shooting at bad guys we never see. But in this most recent attempt at winning over Gen Z, the Army has taken a page out of the CIA's book and appropriated diverse, inclusive language as a way to say, hey, we're modern and cool. We're not just a bunch of trigger-happy barbarians, we're just like you. In a 5-part ad series titled The Calling, the Army shares what are supposedly genuine stories from enlisted soldiers. But because the military knows that all them young people care about is cartoons, they also animated the ads in a few different styles. Let's take a look at a few highlights from the series.
One time, I snuck out and stayed 3 days at a friend's place. When I came home, Mom wanted to teach me to appreciate the life I had by sending me to the Dominican Republic to stay with relatives for a year. One day at school, I came upon an Army recruiter and told him about my goals. He took me through all their different careers, and that's when it hit me. The Army is an army of good people.
Pay close attention to how seemingly innocuous statements are phrased. I was bad, so my mom sent me to another country to see how bad it is compared to the United States. When I came back, I realized that the US is the best country on earth, and the Army is good because America is good.
So as soon as I turned 17, I asked for my dad's blessing to enlist. But having served in the Army during the Vietnam era, responding to civil unrest, he said no. He had his reasons.
I hope his reasons were recognition of the fact that the Vietnam War was just one long string of US war crimes, during which period we massacred innocent people, dropped more bombs than during the entire Second World War, riddled the land with millions of mines, rained fire down on civilian populations, and used chemical weapons which are still causing cancer and birth defects to this day. All for a conflict we never should have initiated in the first place. Of course, by the end of the ad, Dad is proud of his little girl for joining anyway.
But it was one day during a 9/11 ceremony, I started seeing the Army in a new light. Over 3,000 students lined the walls and the balconies of my school. My whole community was there, including firefighters and service members from every military branch. The silent show of respect for this country was deafening. I was now determined to defend this nation that I called home, and to not only be a citizen, but a soldier as well.
This is another common tactic. Hey, remember that bad thing that happened? Look how strong it made us. Look how respectful everyone is of the flag and our country. I'm gonna join the Army. Of course, there's no mention of the fact that 9/11 was used as justification to start an unjustifiable war, which claimed over 1 million lives, destabilized an entire region for decades, and dragged on for so long that Americans who enlisted back then have now been able to watch their children go off to murder the children of the people they didn't manage to kill. The US military-industrial complex is very skilled at using the symbology of the flag as a way to deflect blame, promote a victim complex, and play up the American exceptionalism myth all at the same time. For many people, this kind of ad can be quite effective. But the one that got the most attention, and we'll explore why afterwards, is this one.
This is the story of a soldier who operates your nation's Patriot missile defense systems. It begins in California, with a little girl raised by 2 moms.
I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age.
I needed my own adventures, my own challenge. And after meeting with an Army recruiter, I found it. A way to prove my inner strength and maybe shatter some stereotypes along the way.
If you take a look at this ad on YouTube, or any of them really, you'll see that they got absolutely eviscerated by the viewers. The like to dislike ratio is among the worst I've ever seen. And of course the comments are turned off because there likely wouldn't be a single positive one. Why did these ads flop so hard? The Army managed to outsmart itself and alienate all of their potential recruits. Those on the political right are all up in arms over the woke language and outraged at the idea that the Army is trying to appeal to people who clearly don't belong in the military. Though it is funny to watch these reactionary losers have their little meltdown, what's more important is why the ads fell flat for their target audience: younger, more progressive members of Gen Z. Trying to be more inclusive is good. Acknowledging the validity of all sorts of, quote, non-traditional backgrounds is important. But it shouldn't be surprising that Gen Z, the most anti-war, anti-capitalist generation in decades, sees right through the propaganda. I like to think I've been defending freedom from a young age. Come on. Young people know what the US military gets up to. They live on the internet. They can find plenty of evidence of the mountains of war crimes the US commits. They're aware of past military policies against gay and trans service members. But more than that, they're aware that being allowed to serve in the military isn't some great victory for the LGBT community, because no one should want to invade other countries and oppress their fellow human beings. No matter how hard the military tries to rebrand itself as a woke force for good, freedom, and democracy, no matter how cute they try to make missile launchers, most young people won't fall for it. They know they're being targeted with short, eye-catching, animated propaganda. Of course, these ads will appeal to some young people, and they'll soon find themselves in a situation that is nothing like what's been presented to them, and that's a shame. It's despicable that the military has to steal data, corrupt underage stream viewers, target the poor and desperate, and try to sell a lie to meet their quota of cannon fodder for a great power conflict the United States so clearly wants. The military always has and always will use shady, predatory tactics to fill their ranks. The best we can do is be aware of it, provide truthful information about what joining the military really means, and work towards building a society that doesn't funnel the poor and the impressionable young into the imperialist war machine. Without soldiers to fly their drones, fire their rockets, and drop their bombs, the military can't function. It can't bully the rest of the world. And that sounds pretty good.
All right. So I have to actually applaud Gen Z because they aren't stupid. They definitely are not stupid. And they are seeing through all of this and saying, hey, wait a minute. You know what? Excuse me. The whole don't ask, don't tell thing that went through the military. And now military is trying to say, oh no, we are open to everybody. We include everybody, transgender, gay. It doesn't matter. You know, come on, that's bullshit. That's just straight up. No, you're going to have the worst time in the military. You will be hounded and ridiculed. It is so for them to try and do this and get, you know, try and make it look like the military is all inclusive and this wonderful place is just flat out stupid. Don't get me wrong. Unfortunately, in the world that we live in today, every country needs some sort of military. There are bad people out there, and we do need to protect each other and protect our countries and help other countries. Look what's going on right now in Ukraine. So it's one of those. I'm torn because I was in the military and I was a recruiter in the military, and I loved being in the military. I loved the brotherhood, the camaraderie. I loved being able to have that in common with a group of people, and we all were experiencing the same things and going through the same things. And I've met some incredible people in the military. I've met incredible neighbors that maybe I didn't serve with them directly, but they lived near us in Germany, and we are friends to this day. So I don't regret any of it. It's sad to think that the military in the United States is stooping to those levels of propaganda that we condemn other countries for doing to their citizens when we're doing the same thing. Now, it might not be as blatantly in your face, but it's propaganda. It is the biggest hypocrisy of the United States and the military. That's all it is. We are trying to show people that the military is this wonderful thing, when it might not be, you know. So this, while I know that the military is shady, and the United States government is shady, but some of these actually I didn't know. I didn't know about Twitch. I didn't know about the study guides, but targeting those less fortunate, unfortunately, I also did in the military as a recruiter. And then these new targeted ads, of course, trying to change with the times. I think it's falling on deaf ears because Gen Z, like I said, is not stupid. They see right through all of this. So I'm not surprised at many of these things, but it's still sad nonetheless. So that's all I got for today, my friends. I hope you enjoyed. I know I enjoyed this Warsteiner. Pretty decent beer. If you have a Total Wine or Bevmo or anything similar where you live, try picking up one of these Warsteiner. I know Total Wine, you can do the single bottles, and I do that quite often, just trying to pick new drinks that I haven't tried before. Like I said, I have had this one before, but it saves you from buying a whole case or a 6-pack to test one beer, you know. So this video is in no way sponsored by Warsteiner, but I enjoyed the beer anyway, and I am extremely thankful to all of you for sticking through this video. A little bit different than, the comparisons between Germany and the United States, or Europe and the United States, but this one caught my eye because I'm a vet and I was a recruiter. So it's sad. I think, kind of backing up a little bit, if I may, the United States is an all voluntary force. And correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who lives in Germany, but the way I understand it is that when you turn 18, you are required to either A, enlist in the military, or B, find a job, like a public service type job. Or there might be another choice, but I know that military services could be a requirement, and I believe it's for 2 years. If you do your 2 years, you can get out and go about your business. But I wonder if, I don't think we need to go to that, because I think the military is too shady. Not to say any other government military is shady as well, but like I said at the beginning, the only reason why we want the largest military force is because we want conflict in the world. Otherwise, there's no point in having this huge military to boast about and all this money spent on ammunition and service members, equipment. That money can be served elsewhere much better. It can be put to a lot better use in other places, but that's the way the United States is. We got to be the big bully of the world. So there you have it. Thank you again so much for watching. Please, if you enjoyed this content, if you enjoy my channel, please think about subscribing. It really does help out. And like the video if you liked it. Hit the thumbs down if you didn't like it. As always, leave me a comment below giving me your thoughts on the matter. I read all of them, and unfortunately I'm getting to so many along the line I can't reply to all of them, but I do appreciate it very much. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.